Hi, I'm Professor Shanky. Welcome to another tech tutorial.
In order to create our database, we need to first take a look at the data. So here's a sample spreadsheet that our friend was using for his delicatessen to track his orders. And you can see right off the bat there's a couple things that might come up as potential issues. So he has the customer name, their address, their phone number, their email, so this way he can track his customers. 4 spots for him to enter sandwiches, so if they ordered up to 4 sandwiches, he could put them on one line. If they ordered 1 or 2, you just have some blank spaces here. The date that the transaction occurred and the cost. So the first step that I like to do is to kind of identify the different, I like to think of them as objects. So the different pieces of information that we're actually capturing. So really, if I look at this, there's really 3 or 4 items that we're capturing. The first set here are these columns, and I'm going to do these in a light yellow. So this really here, I'm going to call this the customer. So customer is the first bit of information we're capturing. So here in these lines, or these columns, I'm capturing the sandwich information. And here I have I'm going to put all these together, even though we'll talk about cost later. It's a little bit of an exception. So here we have some transaction information. So I'm taking the data that was given to me. So this was a spreadsheet where Bill used to track all of his sandwich orders, and I broke it down into 3 separate sections. So I have a customer information, a sandwich information, and a transaction information. So below customer, I'm just going to drop down the information. I have name, address, phone, and email. Under my sandwich type, I have just the type of sandwich. I have 4 of them, but I'm going to put 1 down because they're really sandwich 1 and 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. I just have 1 type, which is the type of information. So I'm just going to bring down the type under sandwich. And then under transactions, I have date and the cost. So right now I have my 3 basic tables now that I'm going to have in my database. But before we do this, we need to talk about how do we normalize these so we can use them appropriately in a database. So now that we've pulled out the 3 really entities that we have so far, which is the customer, the sandwich, and the transaction, we need to start thinking about how we're going to normalize this information. So in order to normalize it, there's really 3 basic steps that we're going to go through, and when we're done, we're going to end up with a set of entities or tables that are going to be in what's known as the 3rd normal form. So there is first normal form, second, third. So there is actually more, but for the most part, if you're in 3rd normal form, you're pretty well off. So the first normal form states that all of our tables should be both atomic and non-repeating. So if we look at our first spreadsheet that we had here, if we were to make this one big table, right off the bat, we have 2 issues. We have some issues with the atomacy, where we have white, smooth, and grape, wheat, crunchy, strawberry, customer name. Each of these has more than 1 bit of information in this field. So white refers to the type of bread, smooth refers to the type of peanut butter, and grape refers to the type of jelly. So we're not atomic here. We actually have multiple sets of information. With customer, we have first and last name in 1 cell. Again, that's not atomic. That is actually 2 bits of information, first name and last name. So repeating is the second issue that we have to contend with, where sandwich 1, sandwich 2, sandwich 3, sandwich 4 all repeat. We can't have that either. We need to figure out how can we get rid of this repeating. And really the only way to do that is to pull sandwiches out into their own table, customer into their own table, and transactions into its own table. So you see by the first step, when you look at the data and how does it kind of logically break up into different entities or types of information, that's really going to help you with your non-repeating values. If you're able to pull them out, then we don't have to worry about repeating as long as you can easily identify them. And the second is we got to work on the atomic problems we have here. So for customer, the first one is name. That is not atomic because we have Bill Smith, and we can't really have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take customer. I'm actually going to copy, and I'm going to put them down here. Let's see, so I want to get rid of name, and I will have first name, last name. Alright, so first name and last name is good. Address, is that atomic? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to say at this point it's not. I would argue that there's a couple more bits of information we could pull out. Generally, the street, like street 555 Main Street, 1 Main Street, 2 Elm Street, generally we don't need to break that down. You might in a special case, but for now we're going to leave that alone. However, what about the city, the state, and the zip code? Those are all, I would say, different. So I would say address, we'll keep that as a street address. We will then add the city, state, and zip. So I want you to stop this video now and look at sandwich. See if you can figure out how to make sandwich both non-repeating and atomic. So at this point, pause the video, work on it, and when you're ready, start the video back up. Alright, hopefully you had a chance to figure out how to work on your sandwich. So really, type is not accurate, so I'm going to copy sandwich and I'm going to bring it down here. So what do we do to make this atomic? So we really have 3 bits of information, and I'm going to argue for a fourth one that's not listed. So the fourth one that I'm going to throw in here is name. What is the name of the sandwich? That might be helpful. And then we're going to have bread type, peanut butter type, and jelly type. So those are our 3 bits of information. So no longer do we have this issue with atomicity. So each field has 1 value. And we're also not repeating because a sandwich is a sandwich. And the last one is transactions. And for now, I think transactions is pretty good because we just have a date and a cost. Now that we're breaking down our information a little bit from a spreadsheet and into this concept of objects, we need to talk about a concept in databases known as a key. So keys are identifying field that the entire object can be related to. We need this because part of a database is we need to make sure that it's consistent. And when we talk about a customer, we want to make sure that we're always talking about that particular customer. So what bits of information can we use to create this concept of a key? So there's a couple ways of going about this. We could take multiple fields and combine them to make a key. For example, if I said for each customer the first name is the key, that would be wrong. Why? Well, think about it. Maybe there's a Jane Smith and a Jane Doe. I have 2 Janes. I could very easily lose consistency in my database if I refer to the customer by just Jane. Alright, you might say, well, let's look at first name and last name. So that's another option. I can combine these two fields together. So now my key, or my primary key, is first name and last name. So Jane Smith is Jane Smith, who's different from Jane Doe. That's fine. However, when working with names, there are usually more than one Jane Doe out there. There's probably 1,000 Jane Does or tens of thousands of Jane Does, and if you're working on a database that's going to be having information that's large data sets like, names, you want to take that into consideration. So maybe you do first name, last name, and address. I could do that, but that also, to me, does not make too much sense. People move. What happens if Jane Doe from Cincinnati moves to Honolulu? So now what happens with that information? You've changed your primary key, and you might also have more than one Jane Does living in the same address or state. That just doesn't make sense. One of the easier things you can do is use this concept of a unique identifier or an ID. A lot of times you'll see this when you log into a website or something. You'll be creating a unique username. So that's what we're going to do here. We're actually going to give each of our customers a customer ID. This customer ID is going to be unique, and we are going to manage that through our software to ensure that every person gets one unique ID, and that way we can maintain our consistency. So I want you to think about that for sandwich and transaction on your own. What would be a good ID for sandwich, and what about transactions? Do we need to create a new ID field, or is there some other value that we can use to have a key? So pause this video, think about it, and when you're ready, hit play. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight my primary keys. So ID for customer is great. Sandwich type, I'm just going to stick with name. I'm going to say that I'm not going to have two classic PB&Js. My sandwiches are going to have their unique name, so I'm okay with that. I don't need to create another ID. Transaction, though, I am going to need that. I am going to need some sort of ID to link that transaction back. So transaction is also going to be my ID. So I'm going to make these a little bit different colors so we don't get confused. ID, ID, and ID.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. I'm Professor Shanky, and I'll see you next time.